Shalom, family, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's weekly news updates. Always a pleasure and a privilege for us to get together with you and go over these things as they're happening in our world. And our world definitely is a bit topsy turvy. Now, we are in a bit of a lull period right now for certain things. So, this is why you're going to see some of the social stuff that kind of eclipses other things. In other words, you're seeing sort of international things dying down, and sort of the domestic social agenda in every country is taking off. And I think the reason for it, well, it may be a certain story that they're trying to make go away. It involves certain people, and I don't think they want those names coming out. So stay tuned. We're going to have a great broadcast tonight. I'm certainly grateful for every one of you that like and that subscribe and that are part of the remnant in this hour. And the remnant, by the way, are those who are alive and remain. That's what it means. Just like it says in First Thessalonians, is we must be alive and remain unto the coming. Well, that's who the remnant are. They are the ones who are alive and remain. Amen. And so that's why we want to encourage you to definitely join together with us and be part of that which remains, that does not give in, that doesn't fall away. Amen and amen. And for those of you joining us maybe for the first time, we do have our website, remnantwatch.com, and this is a labor of love by Remnant House, and we continue to put these stories up just to encourage you. And of course, this is here for you to research and look and so forth. You can search back on previous broadcasts if that's of interest to you. We do have these free survival guides, and every single week I think about taking them off, and then there's another disaster. And guys, I can't take them off. I got to keep leaving them there because I keep thinking, well, maybe that'll help even one person. So there's that. And we, of course, have our banner on the top. So if you ever are not sure where to catch the latest broadcast, you can just click that and you're here with us. And so I always want to encourage people to share that link because, again, it's a quick resource. It doesn't have a lot of those banners and ads and all that, if you noticed. And we don't do that. So we do this as a service to one another, really. And we don't want to do these daily because that's just a little too much. So we do these once a week so we can be informed without being overwhelmed. And on that note, let's get into the news. Tonight's top story is the imminent, apparently, prosecution of former President Barack Obama. According to reports, Tulsi Gabbard, who is the head of the Department of National Intelligence, is calling for Obama to be prosecuted over the 2016 election. So this is one of the things that a lot of people thought is going to happen, and sure enough, look at this. Tulsi Gabbard is calling for it. And Trump, his intelligence chief, is accusing the ex-president and others of treasonous conspiracy, which is, by the way, punishable by death. So there's that, for alleging Russian interference. So you make up a story, and you better be careful. You come for the king, you better not miss. Okay? You better not miss. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, has called for Barack Obama and former senior U.S. national security officials to be prosecuted after accusing them of a treasonous conspiracy intended to show that Donald Trump's 2016 presidential election win was due to Russian interference. She said Obama and senior officials in his administration had laid the groundwork for a years-long coup against Trump and his victory over Hillary Clinton by manufacturing intelligence to suggest that Russia had tried to influence the election. And I think many of us suspected this, but boy, oh boy, isn't it a much bigger deal to have the director of national intelligence now releasing evidence on a former president. And it looks pretty shady. So this is coming out right as controversy is out about a whole other legal matter. And so this is what I believe is an eclipse event. As a matter of fact, we're going to have an eclipse here shortly, but I believe that's what you're watching here. Socially, they have an eclipse event going on right now. They're using one group as a shade for another group. You're going to start to pick it up here as we go through these stories tonight. because I believe it's pretty obvious. And of course, Trump is jumping right in on the fray, wanting to make sure he moves the needle in that direction. Watch this now, because you're going to be starting to see some things here. Trump posts an AI generated video showing Obama getting arrested to the YMCA song. Yeah. And so it doesn't show it here, but we have a picture of it on our website, and there is a video out there if you want to watch it. I'm sure it's on Truth Social. If you want to go on over to Truth Social, I haven't done that. Don't plan on it. But I did see the clip, and I saw what they were referring to, and it's obviously an AI generated thing. So what is the point here? Well, there's some other things coming out in the news, and there's some other issues that are being talked about that they want to kind of move off the front and center. So they need a big name to move a big name. I said they need a big name to move a big name. So if you need to move a big name off the screen and get people's attention somewhere else, you need a big name. You got to sully the big name in order to get attention. You see how that works? So they play this game, these wraparound smears and all this is very much the demonic realm, and this is how they play. And so this is not something that we are supposed to be involved in at all. We don't hold grudges. We don't involve ourselves in what Hispanically we call bochinche, which is just gossip. We don't involve ourselves in these things, but, well, this is how this world works. So here we are. And I think we're going to continue to see this kind of mudslinging going on in the international stage, because they're drawing attention away. And that's what I'm discerning. Now, I'd love your thoughts, guys, because you're all very sharp. You follow with me on some of these things. So I do appreciate your insight. I really do. But I think my cousin's over the target. They're trying to keep us away from a certain topic while they wildly talk about some other topics. Even this, look at this. Who expected this to be said? But he's a madman. Trump's team is fretting about Netanyahu after the Syrian strikes. And I have to say, it surprised a lot of people, certainly surprised me, that after the announcement of Syria being essentially given some reprieve, right, getting some relief from sanctions and so forth, as if they were sort of coming into the fold, if you will, and all of a sudden, bang, they start getting on them again. Now, Axios, of course, is a paid site, so we just show you what we can. But the point is that this is exactly the kind of erratic behavior that is oftentimes the smokescreen for other things. So draw your attention over here, because this is going on over here. I don't think it's going to work, but I believe that's what we were watching. I believe the smokescreen, I don't believe the smoke is big enough to cover the damage of what they're trying to cover, if that makes sense. I think they're trying a little too late, and it's not going to work. But that looks to me like what it is. It's like, no, look over here, and the rest of this is nonsense, and look over here, and that's crap, and look over here, and that's ridiculous, and look over here. A little too much of that is going on. And I bet you guys are picking it up too, going, methinks thou doth protest too much. So one of those things that we have to keep paying attention to as we watch the world scene. And Iran is kind of making some interesting noise. I don't know if you guys saw this, but this is in the Jerusalem Post, so I thought this ought to be interesting to review. Iranian officials are claiming that Israel used the occult and supernatural spirits during the 12-day war. This is very interesting. Former editor of the IRGC-linked newspaper Javan told his 150,000 followers on X that a strange phenomenon had taken place during the 12-day war. A senior Iranian official claims that Israel deployed the occult and supernatural spirits during its war with Iran, Iran International reported on Friday. And of course, what they're saying is, after the recent war, a few sheets of paper were found in the streets of Tehran containing talismans of Jewish symbols, he wrote. In the first year of the Gaza war, news had leaked out about Netanyahu meeting with occult specialists. So now they're dropping this into the narrative from the other side. Now remember, they have to demonize one another in order to do war. If you go back in history, and it doesn't take long before you begin to find this is exactly the same things that have been done for centuries. I think, of course, of the early 1600s when the loyalists to the king were, of course, demonized, and they were fought with by those that were with those that eventually overthrew King Charles I in early 1600s. And what they did is they simply pitted one group against the other, calling each other names, and it worked. And they kept doing it, and they've been doing it ever since. So this divide and conquer tactic has not failed, and it continues to produce fruit. So they're going to continue to do this. So I think it's very interesting. But nevertheless, don't you find it fascinating that they're claiming that their loss was due to supernatural things? This is a very interesting development, especially in the last days as we're coming up to the end of all things. So are we seeing the release of more supernatural power? We're going to see more angelic manifestations. Are we going to see more supernatural signs and wonders? Stay tuned, because I think we may be on our way in that direction. And but not everything is hunky-dory in Israel. As a matter of fact, Mike Huckabee, our ambassador to Israel, was very unhappy with them because apparently they weren't being very friendly to Christian evangelical groups that were going over there. And of course, this is a big thing for Israel, because Israel really depends on tourism income for a lot of its economy. And so it's not a good thing if the United States, of all players, is no longer on board. Well, Mike Huckabee is threatening to declare Israel does not welcome Christians. His visa blows open U.S. envoy Penn's scathing letter to Interior Minister, accusing Israel of blocking Christian groups from entering Israel and warning of reciprocal steps against Israeli visa seekers in the U.S. U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee has threatened to publicly declare that Israel no longer welcomes Christian groups to Israel over what he said was Jerusalem's failure to approve tourist visas for evangelical missions. Well, I like the sound of that, because that means that you're seeing some pushback on some of the policies that I do believe have been detrimental to those who want to just come and worship, want to come and visit, want to come and be a part of that culture. And again, you can't on the one hand invite everyone there, and then on the other hand be inhospitable. I mean, after all, you want to make it an international city, you got to open that up. Okay, so I think Mike has a good point, and hopefully these good things will prevail. Maybe more reasonable people will say, hey, maybe he's right. This isn't appropriate, right? Now, I'm sure they're going to say, oh, we were protecting them, because it's a difficult time or something. You're going to get away with that for a little bit. But I think that it is important to understand that there's some forces going on in Israel. There's some things going on in Israel that I believe are being shook out right now. And so that's why it's important for us to continue to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Just a few weeks ago, we talked about this on our Shabbat message, and I really want to encourage you all to take that to heart, to pray for the peace of Yerushalayim. And there's good reason. Look, Israel's got enemies. As a matter of fact, just north of them is the country of Turkey, and they are most unhappy with Israel. As a matter of fact, Turkey is lending troops to the northern border and have done some serious damage up there, guys. So the evidence that I see coming out indicates that Israel has taken a whooping up in the northern part of its, in that northern battle. And Turkey's the one handing it to them. So this is going to get a little more interesting as we go. So now here we go. And it says, Erdogan says Syria's disintegration admissible, calls Israel a terrorist country. So again, if you were paying attention, there was an attack by Israel on the capital, if you will, of Syria. And the Turkish president, of course, got very upset. He stressed that Israel's aggression is the biggest problem for the region today. And he wasn't alone. Again, the United States president said he's a madman. Okay, so there's a lot of world leaders that are looking at Netanyahu going, what are you doing? What are you doing, guy? Okay, Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan has called Israel a terrorist state, saying his country will not allow the disintegration of neighboring Syria. Israel is a terrorist state that does not recognize law principles, Erdogan said. Wow. Do you guys agree with that? I don't know. Do you believe that Israel is a terrorist state like Erdogan says? What's your thoughts? Let me know in the comments. I really would love to know. And under the pretext of the Druze situation, Israel has shifted its criminal actions over the past 2 days to neighboring Syria. Israel's aggression is the biggest problem facing our region today. Do you think that Israel is the problem in the region? A lot of them are starting to say that. I'm starting to wonder, right? Erdogan gave these comments after a cabinet meeting he headed. Before the meeting, the Turkish president held a telephone conversation with interim Syrian President Ahmad Shara to welcome a ceasefire in Syria and express Ankara's support. And of course, we're always on the side of peace. We're always on the side of things calming down and cooler heads prevailing. But how many know that we can't control that? And as a matter of fact, there's a whole lot of forces out there that love war. The Bible, the scripture calls them warmongers. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing here. We're seeing those that like war and those that are saying, hey, we can work this out without the bombs. And when we're all done with the bombs, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to go sit at a table. So you got to kind of wonder, did they just have a certain number of things they wanted blown up first before they go to the table? Because it always ends at a table every time. So I don't know why they don't just go ahead and go to the table, have a seat. Why blow things up? Just anger, frustration, all kinds of things coming out. And of course, what happens when you start to let these things take over your body, your mind? Well, we're seeing health issues on both these leaders. As a matter of fact, many people were commenting in this last week or so about the health deterioration of current U.S. President Donald Trump. There's some concern about that. And I'm not going to point at it too much because it's not really prophetically significant, but it does seem interesting. And then here we have Israel Prime Minister diagnosed with intestinal inflammation after suffering from food poisoning. Now, I must say that if you're going to get sick, and if you're going to get something that's going to knock you out for a couple of days, it's probably good if it happens right before you're supposed to go to court. Just saying. I mean, what a coincidence. Don't you think, guys? Israeli Prime Minister diagnosed with intestinal inflammation after suffering from food poisoning. Netanyahu's office says he will have a 3-day rest and will not join the court session in his corruption trial on Monday. He will not be there. He's got a note from his doctor. He's going to be there. That's the situation. I love Israel, but I think this is silly, right? So we're watching some of this and we're going, just like a bunch of Israelis, because I feel like one of them, and I'm sure there's plenty of them that are going, right? Because they're very hard people when it comes to nonsense, and we're not big fans of nonsense. So we're watching this situation unfold, and in the meantime, things are being blown up. Troops are being sent into things by one who, even a U.S. president, is questioning sanity. One must ask again, what are we watching here? I believe some of this is highly theatrical. Just saying. Okay? In the region, you do see some serious changes going on. And I think that's one of the things that we're about to see as well, folks. I think that mass migration is very much possible in the near term, in the near future. I believe that we are seeing the Earth itself going to move populations, because as it periodically does, it's shifting. And when it shifts, certain places where it was habitable and safe to be stop being habitable. And other places that weren't habitable and were terrible suddenly have mud puddles all over the place. I mean, that just is the way it shifts. So sometimes you're seeing a shift. And I think that's what we're seeing in certain parts of the world. As a matter of fact, for the first time in modern history, a capital city is on the verge of running completely dry. Kabul is inching toward catastrophe. It could soon become the first modern capital city in the world to run completely dry, according to a recent report by Mercury Corps, a non-government organization, Mercy Corps rather, that warns the crisis could lead to economic collapse. And population growth and the climate crisis and relentless over-extraction have depleted groundwater levels. And why? Well, because people have not figured out how to extract water from the air, where there wouldn't be a shortage. But I digress. So for lack of knowledge, people will perish. Technology that exists right now, you could put it right up against the wall and it would produce water all day. And it doesn't require any plumbing, and it could just stand there and converts water from the air right out. But because they don't know that, what are they doing? Well, they're about to destroy destroy their own ecosystem, their own city. Ignorance is a dangerous thing, folks. And it's in a modern time. So some of you looking at history, you go, hey, I was reading the history of this part of the world. That doesn't mean that the rest of the world was just as immodern, if you will. There are shepherds living in tents right now. If you were reading their history books, you'd think the whole world was living in a tent. Just saying. Pay attention. You may be more surprised than you realize about how complex life on Earth has always been. It's always been complex and stratified in various levels. So I think we're all learning the history books are not quite as clean and dried and cut and dried as we once thought. So now the smoke screen is starting to go up. And why? Because Republicans are moving to block the Democrats' effort to release the Epstein files, which they think, of course, will draw attention away from the one that's now being prosecuted. So it's the battle of scandals. White House has come under fire for not releasing documents related to the sex offender Jeffrey Dun-Dun-Dun. We all know who that is, okay? And Republican lawmakers have moved to block the Democratic effort. Now, why is this important? You say, Peter, why does this matter? Why are you diverting attention to this nonsense? I'll tell you why. Because it's something Messiah warned us about. He warned us about those. He told us a couple of things. And one of them is through the apostles, he warned about eating and drinking things strangled and blood, number one. So he was hinting about something. He also said something about those who would hurt a child, and that it would be better for a millstone tied about their neck than that they should hurt one of the children of believing in. And so I believe that that day of judgment is soon upon this group, this particular group, if you know what I mean. If you're able to read between my lines. Okay? And so I believe that this group that we all know about when we talk about this topic is really the issue here, if we all can just come to understand that. And that is what is being drawn attention away from in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't matter what has to happen. Literally blow up anything to change the subject. So just so you know, this is probably what we're going to see for the summer is move, counter move, which is going to get really chaotic. So it's probably a good idea to disconnect from most of that. And it's a good time to connect with your brethren, connect with your brothers and sisters, find your gift, discover your call, discover why you're on the earth, find out which one of your switches are up and which ones are down, and see what Yahuwah wants to do about that, right? I mean, we got to be yay and nay. Well, there's so much we've got to learn, folks. We've got to overcome. And now, of course, the controversy heats up because Elon Musk, who's not happy, he's a grumpy Gus, and he's out there. And what's he saying? Well, he's demolishing Trump's claim that Democrats created the Epstein file hoax. Okay, Elon Musk took aim at Donald Trump on Wednesday after the president attempted to redefine Jeffrey Epstein's notorious sex trafficking scandal as just a hoax created by the Democrats. The Tesla billionaire blew a hole through the president's latest claim by pointing at some obvious facts, including that Epstein's former confidant, Ghislaine Maxwell, remains locked up in federal prison. Something that doesn't matter doesn't get someone locked up in federal prison. He should just release the files and point out which part is the hoax. He added in another post. And you know what? That's a great point. Release the files and tell us. And by the way, this part, the part that says I was there, the part that says I was part of this, that's the hoax part. Right? And everybody's figuring it out. What did one of the influencers said? He thinks we're stupid. He thinks everyone is stupid. We're just going to look the other way because it's him, because he said so. Like everyone just loves him so much, we're going to ignore. Wait a minute. What's going to come out? What information are we finally going to get that's going to tell us really where we are? And how many people are going to come to a place of despair as a result? How many people are going to suddenly realize they put their hope and their faith in a political system that has no possibility of saving them? Not even a chance. But they tried. So there's that. And unfortunately, I think this situation is only going to deteriorate. Moving on to the international scene, of course, We still see conflict going on in Eastern Europe, although that is seemingly losing steam in the public eye as well as on the battlefield. And now it's moving to the economic war. And of course, Trump is threatening all kinds of things, but the EU is also in play here. And they are struggling because they've rejected gas, and now it's leading to some seriously adverse circumstances. And huge restrictions have been introduced for EU countries, and the policy of the European Union on the phased reduction of shared Russian gas in its market has already resulted in adverse consequences for its economy. Russian President Vladimir Putin said at the meeting with head of the Russian Association of Fertilizer Producers. And of course, this is something that is, it's a sort of silly thing. The people are paying for it because everybody needs everybody. All the countries need each other. When the United States got mad at China, they couldn't get any rare earth minerals. Remember that? Rare earth minerals are needed for magnets. They're needed for cars. They're needed for a lot of manufacturing. So that was a really silly argument to have. It's like, okay, they're going to have it for a little while. But at some point, they got to give in and go, okay, let's work this out because we need each other. And frankly, Saints, that's the case internationally. That's where we are. And so basically, we're going to continue to see more and more of these sort of nonsensical things, theatrical maneuvers that just get them to the table. It's just like reshaping your seat at the table, but you're still going to the table. Okay? And what are they saying in Politico? Well, something that many of you were whispering in the corners. What are we watching here with this presidency? What are we watching with this populist president? What are we watching here when they're making billboards calling him Messiah? What are we watching here, right? We all ask that. I mean, honest people had to ask, what are we looking at? And now Politico just comes out and says, national security elites accept Trump is creating a new world order. So they don't use a different word, guys. They don't even use a different word. Okay? The U.S. president has revamped trade, aid, and military force to an extent that attendees here will have effects for decades to come. Aspen, Colorado, 6 months into President Trump's second administration, national security elites at the annual Aspen Security Forum have accepted that this president has irrevocably upended the global order. New world order. There shall be a new world order. And right away you're all wondering, well, what does that mean? Well, what it means is that there's going to be superpowers. There's going to be powers and then superpowers. So right now you have states that have powers, but if you have super states that are above states, then you have superpowers. These are, if a state can trample the rights of an individual, what do you think superpowers can do? Okay, so you're starting to figure it out. And that's why you're seeing so much opposition building from other countries on the other side, because they see the writing on the wall and they're saying, I don't think we want to play with this whole superpower program you guys are trying to put together. And frankly, Russia's kind of leading the way here, guys, and they're saying they don't care about Trump's theatrical ultimatum, says Medvedev. This is Moscow's first official reaction to the statement that Trump made yesterday. Of course, Trump was saying that he's going to issue a sort of a threat, if you will, a theatrical ultimatum to the Kremlin, and the world shuddered expecting the consequences. But I got to tell you something. Russia don't look scared. Russia did better under sanctions. Yeah, their economy actually expanded under sanctions. They made more business deals, had more partners, and had better favor under threat of the United States than when they were in good standing. So that's why they're like, we don't care. Go ahead. Make us the bad guy. We'll make more friends out here with people who don't like you. You see how that's working, folks? And there were only 2 countries in the world that voted that food is not a right. I didn't know that. 2 countries. And the U.S. was one of them. So it's pretty sad. And I think that the international feeling toward U.S. policies and U.S. thinking is diminishing quickly. And I think it would be wise for those in the West to catch on board as to why and get in front of that. And as far as what we can see, I believe that the reason why you're seeing some of the machinations you're seeing is because the Trump administration does perceive that BRICS is their biggest threat. And I do believe that that is in fact true, that it is the BRICS nations coalescing, developing their own economic systems, their own clearance houses, their own SWIFT systems, so they don't need the West to do business. Oh, the BRICS threat to the U.S. dominance has actually triggered President Trump's immediate tariff threats following the July 2025 BRICS summit, which we talked about. Remember that, guys? We talked about that last week. Trump posted on Truth Social, any country aligning themselves with the anti-American policies of BRICS will be charged an additional 10% tariff. The BRICS versus the U.S. economy tensions stem from Trump's BRICS criticism as the bloc accelerates de-dollarization impact and drives a global power shift. BRICS represents through alternative financial systems. So those people who were waiting for Trump to destroy the Federal Reserve are now realizing you've been played. You've been played. You've been played. Played. Yeah. He played you. He played all the right. He played all of the right wing. He knew exactly what to tell everybody. And now that he's in, he's literally telling them, I don't care. I don't want your vote anymore. Oh, wait, I don't need it anymore. Like, he's done. Because this was all about his survival. And you're going to learn as things come out why he had to do some of the things he did. And unfortunately, folks, this is the way this world works. Those that are pure in heart usually don't survive. They come for you. Okay, so you have to be very careful, be sober and vigilant. John was wise. He was able to dodge them for the longest, it wasn't because for lack of trying. They put him in a vat of oil to kill him, and it didn't work. So, and I remember I told you guys a lot. This is theatrical theater, right? Remember? And so what just a few weeks ago, we're talking about, the British were talking about, man, we're going to send in troops. The French are like, they are coming. They are France. Right? Remember that? Now comes the reality. See, they put those big headlines out, pump up their people. But the reality is Europe doesn't have the strength to send troops to Ukraine, despite Macron's ambitions. See? Here comes the reality. Here comes the check. Here comes the actual bill for the big plan. Despite a lot of discussion, basically a lot of bravado and chest beating from French President Emmanuel Macron, Europe doesn't have the strength. Even if it had the money, it would have to start now training a force to send a multinational force to Ukraine that could impose peace. Even if you were to implement the idea, it would be a tantamount to suicide, especially if they were to enter before a peace agreement is reached. Macron is not alone in this, as the top leaders of Germany stand with him. It's just literally a case of entitlement mentality. They are so used to being in charge, they don't realize they just lost. Throw them out. Go ahead, throw them out. Well, you can't. Well, then you don't get to dictate terms. Things are changing, folks. And a lot of it is theatrical nonsense, as I told you. So their whole, we're going to send in the troops. I knew it was nonsense the minute they said, I'm like, Europe doesn't have troops. Okay, Europe's been depending on the United States with all of its bases all over Europe to defend. And now the United States is going, tariff. You will pay me tariffs. You will pay me for my army. And they're going, whoa. And then the Russians are like, you will pay for the gas. And Europe's like, whoa. So Europe's getting squeezed, man. Europe's getting squeezed right now. Europe's like, oh, man. If we don't pay the Americans their tariffs, they don't defend us. And if we don't buy gas from the Russians, we're all going to freeze this winter. Well, look at this pickle we're in. Europe's not doing good. As a matter of fact, the EU is warning right now that trade with the U.S. could effectively be wiped out if Trump follows through on his threat because he can't afford it. What they're basically doing is crying uncle. They're like, please, Donald, we can't pay you. We don't have the money. Well, they're lying, of course, but that's what they're saying. And so that's where we are right now, where the EU is really, the European Union is warned that its trade with the United States could be effectively wiped out if Washington makes good on its threat to slap a 30% tariff on goods imported from the bloc. The tariff of 30% or anything above 30% is more or less the same effect. So practically it prohibits the trade. So essentially it's saying, we're just not doing business. It's an off switch, guys. It's an off switch. They're turning the trade off. Well, that's one way to fix your trade imbalance. Stop letting them sell their products in the United States unless they're willing to pay a tariff. And if they don't, well, then that's going to shut off the importing, and all you'll be doing is exporting, and you've now fixed your trade imbalance. That's one way to do it. It's one way to do it. And that's something, by the way, that I've been hearing about since Reagan. Trade imbalance, right? And the trade deficit. That's what they mean by trade deficit, that we buy more than we send out of the United States. So this is one way to fix those numbers, is to put so many tariffs on these countries that they can't import, but you can still export, so your numbers will balance back out. Clever manipulation of the numbers, if you ask me. Again, short-term manipulation tactics usually don't work for the benefit of the people. They usually only work for politicians and actors and, I don't know, Wall Street guys or something, I don't know. China, changing the subject, has gotten some really cool things going on. Look at this. Now, they're releasing a 373-mile-an-hour slow train. You say, what do you mean, slow train? Well, I happen to know that they got one that goes 1,500 miles an hour underground. So, there's that. Anyway, China's 373-mile-per-hour maglev train debuts, slashing travel time between cities. So they decided, let's give some to the peasants. China's built maglev train, set to become the country's fastest ground transport vehicle, was publicly unveiled this week at the 17th Modern Railways exhibition in Beijing, according to South China Morning Post. And of course, these are really cool. You can travel, of course, extremely fast. This is about as fast as commercial airlines. And of course, China is a vast country, so this is a very, very good innovation for them. And maglev is actually a really cool tech because it reduces emissions. It uses magnetic levitation as a mechanism for the train. So it's actually pretty clever when you look at it. Pretty clever device, pretty clever system. It could reduce our need for fossil fuels and can consequently reduce the the gases and emissions and all that. So there's some good things there. But all in all, though, is it worth it? I don't know. They're incredibly expensive and destructive to the environment. So there's trade-offs, right? Everything has its pluses and its minuses. But I thought that was pretty interesting. And they sure do move pretty fast. And I know that that's not the fastest they can go. So they've got them that go at least 3 times that speed underground. So we've heard enough stories to know that that's probably true. And getting back to this scandal, of course, the top Democrats reveal massive operation by the FBI to comb through any of these files and flag any mention of the president. So now we're getting all the stories and the counter stories. This is going to drag on. We're going to keep seeing this emotional drama. This is why you don't want to pay too much attention to the news. Senate Democrat Dick Durbin revealed the FBI launched a massive operation to dig through the Epstein files and flag any mention of Donald Trump. And so you think Don Bongino is down with that? You think these guys are all down with this? I think that's why you're getting some of the reactions you're getting like, now, of course, if it turns out that they were, files thrown in there just to throw shade, I mean, after all, if they're going to build a Russia hoax, then it isn't beyond the possibility that they could have seeded some of these files. However, I think I agree with Musk. Put them out there and then show us the parts that they faked, and then show us how they faked it. And then, then that takes care of that. So no problem. So I think this whole, we're going to cover it up first and then makes it look really shady. Okay. Especially as government is continuing down a path that we all noticed decades ago. And if anybody thought electing a guy with a red hat was going to make it all go away, they're now finding out not mattering. It's not a big deal. Nobody cares. So the wearables trap, how the government, look at this, guys. I didn't know this. You guys know this? I did not know this. I'm not a wearables guy. I don't wear the things, the watches and all that stuff. I know some people really do. And I never knew there was anything wrong with them. I thought it was pretty cool, But it turns out that the government plans to monitor, score, and control you using your wearables. Great. Thanks. That's just great, guys. Bodily autonomy, the right to privacy, integrity over your own bodies, is rapidly vanishing. The debate now extends beyond forced vaccinations or invasive searches to include biometric surveillance, wearable tracking, and predictive health profiling. We are entering a new age of algorithmic authoritarian control, where our thoughts, moods, and biology are monitored and judged by the state. That, my friends, is 1984. Yes, 1984, George Orwell. Those of you that are of my age bracket or, thereabouts will go, oh, Peter, you're right, that was. We're watching the slow unfolding of the Matrix, right? Judgment Day, all these things right there in front of our faces. And that's why I believe, and who are the people that survived Judgment Day? The ones who were listening to the radio broadcast, right? The guy, what was the name of that guy? John Connor. John Connor, this is John Connor. I'm coming to you from the resistance. If you're listening to this broadcast, you are the resistance. You know what I mean? Like, where were they? Were they in the cities? No, cities were blown up, messed up, just death zones, right? Where were the survivors in every one of these movies? Off in the middle of nowhere. Always are. So something to keep in mind. I mean, just saying. It's always the guys out in the middle of nowhere that survive these things. So it is a very serious time. And of course, the earth itself is indicating to us that we're in a time of change. And that's, I think, one of the biggest things that I keep looking at. It's one thing to see the news and all that other stuff. It's like, it's all theatrics. It's all manufactured by men. This, on the other hand, is not. I mean, unless they're doing something underground or something, but this kind of stuff is pretty telling of where we are, because he warned us in Matthew 24 that we would see this exact thing, the increase of earthquakes. And Mount Rainier rocked by 800 of them. That's not 80 or 8. That's 800 earthquakes in 30 days. Anybody want to do the math on how many earthquakes that is per day? It's a lot of earthquakes, folks. Okay? And so nearly 800 earthquakes have rattled Washington's Mount Rainier in the last 30 days, sparking fears that one of America's most dangerous volcanoes is coming to life. As a matter of fact, there's 4 of them in line that are all coming to life, not just Mount Rainier. And more than half of the quakes, approximately 512, struck in July alone, with one intense swarm unleashing over 400 tremors in just 12 hours. And this towering stratovolcano looms over more than 3.3 million people across the Seattle, Tacoma metro area, threatening to cripple entire communities with ashfall, flooding, and catastrophic mud flows if it erupts. And so people are sitting there wondering, is it going to erupt? Is it going to erupt? And you say, why did so many people die in Vesuvius and all this place? Because they sit there. And for years, nothing happens. But then one day, the last thing you hear about is it blew up, people died, that's it. Now it's in the history books as a day the thing blew up. You never heard about the 100 years or 50 years or whatever that they lived under the mountain and nothing happened. And so that's why they were there. And that's why they're right there, because it doesn't go off that often. But then it does. Then it's that day, right? And so we need to continue to pray, to be counted worthy to escape the things that must surely come to pass. And as a matter of fact, as I said, it's more than one volcano. Volcanoes in multiple states. Did you guys know this? I just found this out, so I didn't know. So if you didn't know, don't feel bad, because neither did I. Volcanoes in multiple states have been rumbling. What's going on? Volcanoes in Alaska, Washington State, Oregon, and Hawaii have been rumbling and even spewing lava enough to spark a swarm of news stories. But despite the jolts and tremors, geologists say there's no cause for alarm. Don't you just love these guys? It reminds me of that movie with John Cusack. What was it, 2012? Where Arnold Schwarzenegger's on TV and he says, I believe the worst is behind us. And John Cusack's on the phone going, when they tell you it's fine, that's when you run. That's the line in the movie, right? Well, when they tell you everything's no problem, That's when you run. I think it's a really dangerous time seismically. I don't think anyone can really tell you, oh, it's going to happen here, happen there. I don't think that's how it's going to be, but I think it's a dangerous time seismically. And that means we're going to see earthquakes and volcanoes. And then the results of those things as a result of that. So stand by, folks. In addition to that, we also starting to see a lot more of this. Even here in New Mexico, we had a warning that came out. Flash floods are becoming more and more common. Have you guys noticed that? You're seeing more of the flooding threat. Now, again, this always makes us think of Noah, judgment, last days. We all think of that stuff when we see flooding, right? Even though he said he would never flood the whole world, doesn't mean it won't be periodic flooding. Flash flood warnings issued for New York City. New Jersey declares emergency as heavy rain soaked the area, and it is bad. Look at this, guys. Okay, this is bad. So this is devastating to not just the local life, if you will, but the economies, the jobs, the kind of effect that this has. Oh, look, wildlife even being affected. Although I think the wildlife will be probably the ones that adjust the easiest. But this is hard to adjust to. Look at this, somebody's basement completely covered in water, and so this is becoming more common. This is again why we left the emergency checklist things there, because we keep seeing more of this. We keep seeing more and more stories where it's a once in, what did they just give us? 4 once in 1,000 floods. 4 of them last week, remember? 4 of them in once in 1,000 years. Apparently it's not so once in 1,000. Apparently it's once every couple of weeks now. Not so 1,000 years anymore. Either that or this is one epic year. I said either that or this is one epic year. And speaking of epic, boy, have you guys been traveling? If you've been traveling, can you tell me quickly what your experience with? Drop it in the chat if you've had trouble getting through airports, lots of plane delays and so forth. I hadn't heard a lot, but this story came out about Alaska Airlines grounding all flights because of IT outage disruptions, and that is concerning. It's one thing to cancel a flight or 2. It's another thing to cancel them all. Do you have any idea how hard a decision like that would be to make? And what you would have to be looking at in order to come to the conclusion that the best thing to do was to shut down the entire, all your flights? An IT outage led to Alaska Airlines grounding all its flights in nearly 3 hours Sunday night, leaving worried passengers shaken amid the ongoing travel crisis. Alaska Airlines stated the IT outage resulted in a temporary system-wide ground stop for Alaska Airlines and Horizon Airlines. What it sounds to me like, based on the amount of time that it took and knowing what I know about IT, it sounds to me like they literally had to reboot their systems and probably go to backup. So that tells me if it took them 3 hours, most likely they brought on a backup system because the main system was that corrupted. Something really bad happened there. And what that means is that there's an assault going on they don't want to tell you about. And that's why I bring this up, because, and why I'm asking if anybody else has experienced recently, if you've been traveling, if you've been seeing things like entire airline desks, they're out, outages, their systems are down, if that's becoming more common. Let me know in the comments. I'd really appreciate that, because I do think there may be something going on here. Moving on to other stories, John MacArthur, the Mahogany preacher, renowned pastor and Bible teacher, dies at age 86. Just thought I should mention that for those that may care to know that. Mark Zuckerberg is expanding his secretive Hawaii compound. So how many know that when these fires came through Hawaii, there was a lot of discussion about Marky Boy, Mark Z. Yo, Z, what you doing out there, Z? Right? And so then they let it go. They stopped doing anything, cooled it down. Cool it, man. Too many people asking questions. Well, apparently enough time has passed. So he's expanding his secretive Hawaii compound. Part of it sits atop a burial ground. So this is really bad look for him. And of course, you can read this story if you like. But I just thought it was worth mentioning because I do believe that we're seeing reshifting. And while the masses don't know what's going on, I do believe that we're seeing a lot of change going on in the undercurrents of world power, governments, financial, everything. There's a shift going on right now. And some of it is going to be in a bad direction. How many know that the scripture warns us that a day's wages will be needed for just some food? And experts are warning, as a beloved staple of rice could be wiped out. It's quite possible. And so, as a country whose history has been closely tied to rice cultivation, Japan's current railroad rice crisis is more than just a dietary inconvenience. The staple crop is shortage has put farmers, consumers, and politicians on edge as they worry its entire future is under threat. And so, this is happening crop by crop, by the way, guys. This is not one here, one there. It is all across the earth, from corn to wheat to rice to basic staples, things that we took for granted, that we just go to the store. Just go to the store. No problem. Except, no, big problem. And it's getting worse. So just be aware of that, folks. Be aware. We did have, I'm going to move along here because we're running out of time. And there are a couple of stories that, I do want to hit. One of them was about Florida, a couple of Florida stories. One of them was 4 people died in Florida from a flesh-eating bacteria found in coastal waters. So be careful out there, folks. These waters are not safe. Health officials are warning against swimming in the ocean. Wounds with an open wound as the vibrovulnificus infections reach 11 cases statewide. For those of you that have Shemin Raphael, if ever you are infected by something like that, get that Shemin on that infection immediately. It will arrest it, but not many things will. So, just so you know. Another phenomenon that was going on in the Florida area, coming out of Georgia and northern Florida, are cats. Weird. Mama and I were seeing this story, and I just thought of it just now. Cats, all of a sudden, all migrating. I'm talking all kinds of stray cats, home domesticated cats, just all going to Miami. Nobody knows why. A little weird. I love your thoughts. I really wanted to ask you guys about that because I was like, I did not hear about that. I heard about like a half an hour before the broadcast. I was like, you're kidding. What is going on here in Miami? Cat Haven. Some kind of weird thing going on with cats. So just so you know. And of course, there is a lot of hacking going on. So that's why I'm a little concerned about airlines doing things like that, shutting things down. A global hack on Microsoft product hit the U.S. State agencies and researchers say. So hackers exploited a major security flaw and widely used Microsoft server software to launch a global attack on government agencies and businesses in the past few days, breaching U.S. federal and state agencies, universities, energy companies, and an Asian telecommunication company, according to state officials and private researchers. The U.S. government and partners in Canada and Australia are investigating the compromise of SharePoint servers, which provide a platform for sharing and managing documents. Tens of thousands of such servers are at risk, experts say, and Microsoft has issued no patch for the flaw. Basically, the door is ajar, and it remains so. Isn't that something? Like, there's no patch. Haven't fixed it. Don't know how to fix it. There's some holes in their schemes. They don't sell file security. They sell difficulty. That's what they sell. They don't sell unbreakable locks. They just sell difficulty. There is a way to make unbreakable locks. They won't do that. They sell difficulty. And so this is where we are. By the way, some really odd things coming on and very scary things happening. China is cracking down. If you are in the east part of the world, face recognition cameras are now being used in gatherings to catch you. If you are gathering to be as a believer, rising economic pressures in China have led to the new wave of persecution against Christians. The government is arresting pastors simply for collecting tithes and offerings. Foreign missionary activities are now restricted. However, despite the latest crackdown by Supreme Leader Xi Jinping, Christianity continues to spread throughout the country. And of course, whenever you persecute believers in Mashiach, it does not work. But they keep trying. So, nothing new there. Nevertheless, part of the deal. We are seeing continued stupidity in churchianity as well as we continue to see things like this. So continue to pray for the real fivefold to come up, because this clown show has got to end. Somebody say Yada Yahuwah. Amen. So I'm very glad for the exposure of nonsense like this, but it is very sad that we've come to this point and allowed ourselves to be sort of lampooned, if you will, into this position. And so unfortunately, I do believe that we need to be a little wiser about the days that we're in. And on that note, I want to encourage everyone out there to be very careful to not be a conduit of the devil. Don't be used by the devil to be part of his plan, to be an accuser of the brethren, or to hurt one another, or to bring accusation one against another. No, we're peacemakers. That's what the sons of Elohim, right? God. That's what the sons do. We make peace. Okay? And so for those of you that are like, well, is it Elohim? Is that his name? Yes, it's Elohim. It's not God, but I know where you are, so I'm trying to help you. But nevertheless, folks, that's what he makes us. He makes us peacemakers. That's what we are. And so if somebody has a problem, we say, well, let's make peace. Well, there's a difficulty. Well, let's make peace. Well, there's an argument. Let's make peace. Well, every time you ask us what do you want us to make, we always want to make peace. Why? Because we're peacemakers is what we are. And how many know that there are troublemakers? They're not sons of Elohim. There are strife makers. They are not sons of Elohim. There are war makers. They are not sons of Elohim. They are gossip makers and accusation makers and trouble makers. These are not the sons of Elohim. The sons of Elohim are peace makers. Be a peacemaker today. Carry peace wherever you go. Go in peace to your brother and your sister. And if someone you find has aught against their brother, help them out. Matthew 5 tells you the remedy. Leave your gift at the altar and go and reconcile with your brother that you have aught against. Amen? You're still angry at your brother, are you? Leave your gift at the altar and go reconcile with your brother. Still upset at your sister, are you? Still carrying a grudge, are we? Leave your gift at the altar and go reconcile with your sister. Then come and give your gift. As Messiah said, either you're a believer or you're not. We will know if you do it. For those of you that do, we commend you and we are proud of you, because you are the authentic sons and daughters of Elohim. Those that don't, well, they've outed themselves as just parasites of the body. I mean, no, a parasite is not the body, just one attached. We have to know that. And we know that we need to do cleanses. Yes, we do. And so that's what wormwood is for. It removes parasites. So again, just because it's attached doesn't mean it belongs there. And so on that note, folks, be encouraged. Be an encouragement one to another. Don't let anybody put out your light. Let no man take thy crown. And remember to be a peacemaker. Thank you so much for joining us. May Elohim Baruch each and every one of you. Good night.